Good evening, everybody. I welcome you all for this virtual meeting today. This virtual meeting today is about one particular temple called Thiruvalesswaram. This Thiruvalesswaram is a Chola temple built by Rajaraja Chola, and it is in the middle of the Pandya country, the arch enemies of the Cholas. It's a very, very small temple and a very significant temple. And that's what we are going to see in today's presentation. Thiruvalesswaram Temple is a marvelous gift of the Cholas to the Pandya country. This wonderful temple of Thiruvalesswaram is located near Ambasamudram in Tirunelveli district. Close to Ambasamudram, there's a beautiful temple called Brahmadesam. And just less than a kilometer from Brahmadesam is this wonderful temple of Thiruvalesswaram located. This temple, because of its rich inscriptional values and the sculptural values, it's been taken over as a monument under the ASI, and it falls under ASI protected monument. It's sad that this particular temple does not attract any visitors. Hardly anybody comes to this particular temple, and there's only one Kala Puja which happens there, and you can never see the god. And there's no fixed time for them to open the sanctum and do this puja. So it happens any time of the day between morning to noon. So if you are lucky only, you can see the sanctum of this temple, but otherwise the temple is open. So I had been there to this temple twice, and I could just go around this temple and admire the beauty of this temple alone. So which is what I'm going to share with you today. Since the temple is located in a very, very remote village, it hardly attracts any visitors, as I said earlier. And this temple is beautifully maintained by the ASI with a lovely lush green lawns and trees and everything. During the time of Rajaraja, this Thiruvalesswaram was a very strategic location. Rajaraja had located a huge battalion of his army and forces here. They were basically located in this place because to keep a check on the Pandyas who were thrown out of the Pandya country, the Tamil country. They were taken asylum in Sri Lanka and other places, and suddenly they used to spring up from somewhere and then start a war. So to keep a check on these Pandyas and the Cheras from intruding into this Chola territory, which had come into this Pandya country, which had come into the Chola territory, Rajaraja had located a very huge army in this place, and that was the importance of this particular Thiruvalesswaram in those days of 10th century. Thiruvalesswaram is a Chola temple built in the 10th century during the time of Rajaraja. This is the only temple that has been built by Rajaraja, which is located outside the Kaveri Basin, and it is in the Tirunelveli district of Tamil Nadu. It is said that this is the first ever temple that was built by Rajaraja, even before building his wonderful temple of Rajarajeshwaram at Tanjavur. This area was known as Rajaraja Chaturvedi Mangalam in those days. And today, this particular small village is known as Ayyan Thiruvalesswaram. This temple is a protected monument under the ASI, and it does not fall under the Tamil Nadu circle of ASI, but it's maintained by the Tiruchur, Kerala circle of ASI, and it's been maintained very beautifully, spick and span, with lovely lush green gardens and trees all around. And it's a very, very pleasant experience to go around this temple and see. Now, as you enter, The temple is surrounded by high-rise compound walls on all the sides. There is no entrance gopuram. The entry to this temple is through a single door. And as you enter through the single door, it opens up to the wide second prakara of the temple. As you enter through the small door, you see this mandapam, and it opens up to the wide prakara there, you see, which forms the second prakara of this wonderful temple. As we enter, we see a plain pillared mandapam housing the Dvajastambam, Balipitham, and the Nandi. And there's one inscription slab of Rajaraja's period, which is placed here. Actually, this mandapam does not belong to the original part of the temple. This should have been a later addition during the 17th century by the Nayak kings. So this, it is very clear that if you see the structure of the pillars, everything, it's very clear this mandapam should have been a later addition during the Nayak period only. And apart from that mandapam, you also see a few sannidhis which are there spread across this prakara, second prakara. All these sannidhis are very simple, and all these sannidhis were later creation during the 17th century only. You have separate sannidhi for Devi, you have separate sannidhi for Subramanya, Bhairava, and so on. So all these things were later additions that you see there in this temple after which came up after 17th century only. As we enter through the second prakara and go inside the inner prakara, the Garbhagraha, the Vimana of Thiruvalesswaram is seen very clearly. Very majestic and very beautiful Vimana is seen there. And this Vimana is inside a fully enclosed prakara with a mantapa all around the four sides of the temple. An open Mahamandapa connects to the fully enclosed Ardhamandapa of the temple. This is the Vimana on top of the sanctum. This is the Ardhamandapa, and this is the Mahamandapa. This Mahamandapa is totally open and it connects through the Ardhamandapa to the sanctum of the temple. It's a very, very small temple. A small door opens on the south of the prakara, south of the Ardhamandapa, which leads out to the prakara of the temple, which is very wide open, covered prakara. The outer wall of the Ardhamandapa and around the sanctum, on all the three sides, you can see many inscriptions. And most of these inscriptions are, as I say that, a lot of endowments were received by this temple during the times of Rajaraja and other kings of Chola dynasty who ruled it. Of course, we have inscriptions of Rajaraja, Rajendra, and many other Chola kings, and also some inscriptions of the Pandya kings, which are also seen on the outer walls of this temple. The inscriptional value in this temple is considered to be very high, and it throws a lot of light into the history of the Cholas. The wealth of inscriptions here also denotes and shows the greatness of this temple, that this temple enjoyed a very predominant place in those days. The second prakara, or the inner corridor of the temple, is close to the mantapa on all the sides. The north side base alone is seen there, and the mantapa is missing. The Madapalli is also enclosed here in this temple, the southeast corner of the temple. A few stone images or stone murthis of gods like Surya and the Adhikara Nandi are seen there freestanding. Here you see a beautiful image of Surya holding the lotus flower in his hands is seen here. And also the image of Adigar Nandi, the commander of Shivaganas, is seen here with the folded hands. These are all the Chola sculptures which are seen and placed inside the temple here for our view. This is a very, very simple temple with Vitala Vimana, that is two-tiered Vimana, which comes over the Garbhagraha of the temple. The Devakoshtas are plain and empty, totally plain and empty. You do not have any murthy images or the regular Devakoshta images like Dakshinamurti, Brahma, Vishnu, or Lingodbhava, Durga, or any of these murtis are seen. These are all plain koshtas that you see here. The Adhisthana, the base of this beautiful temple, is wonderfully molded with pilasters and decorated in the typical Chola style. You can see the base, which is very typical of the Chola style. The Saptamatrikas, the seven mothers, which consists of Brahmi, Maheshwari, Vaishnavi, Varahi, Indrani, Kaumari, and Chamunda. All the seven mothers are seen there. These are also the Chola period sculptures which are seen there. And it should have been in a particular place. Now they are brought and kept inside this mandapam. And you have the Veerabhadra image on one end and Ganapati also flanking this row of mothers. And apart from this, you have two images of these munis or Bhutaganas, which is there, which is very unusual. Probably these Bhutaganas should have been a part of this temple somewhere. And today they are brought and kept along with the group of the Saptamatrika images here. The Yalivaris are wonderful in this temple. Normally in all the Chola temples what we had seen earlier, all the Yali faces were alone there, and the Yali image in full is not at all seen. But here in this temple, the entire Yalivari, you can see that the Yali image is given in full, and it's beautiful Yalis which are running all around the temple. Look at that, beautiful Yalivaris. The full image of Yali is seen here. You see the Gajayali, you see the Simhayali, everything very beautifully depicted. The fight between the Simhayali and the Gajayali is also shown here wonderfully. The Yalivari continues to be there on the first tala level also and the second tala level also. You see the first tala level of Yalis here. Below the Yalivaris, you have the Bhutavaris. The Bhutavaris are normally seen in all the temples, and these Bhutaganas, they depict Bhutas, that is Bhutaganas of Shiva, in a very playful mood, enjoying their playing all the mischiefs there, and they are depicted in a beautiful manner. In this particular temple, the Bhutavari is very wonderful and very clear, creative, and you see them playing in different moods. Look at that. That was wonderful Bhutavari there. Two Bhutas lying down while others are climbing on top of them and playing. The Bhutavaris, and above that you find the Yalivaris there. Look at that. Wonderful Bhutas. Dancing, playing. They're enjoying the temple. They're enjoying the presence of Shiva inside the temple. That's what it denotes. The Vimana is raised over a square sanctum, which is 20 feet by 20 feet. And this is a Vitala Vimana built with the use of a pinkish granite stone. And it's a very beautiful pinkish granite stone, which is normally, you cannot see this color of granite stones used in many of the temples. This is very rare to see this pinkish granite stones which are used here in this temple. The Vimana is simple with 2 rows of yalivaris at the bottom of the both talas. You find this Vimana is very simply decorated with 2 rows of yalivaris at every beginning of the every tala level. The lower level of the first tala is divided into 3. Sala is there in the middle. This is Sala. What you see here is the Sala, a wide looking Vimanam type. So this is a Sala, it is called in the temple architectural aspects. This is Sala in the middle and 2 Hara elements. This is called the Hara. This element is called a Hara, which is like a miniature temple. On either side, you have the Haras. And inside that Hara, you have different Shomurtis are located in the Hara and the Sala also. Apart from that, you have in between another architectural element which is called the Kudu. In between this is the Kudu. In that Kudu also you have a wonderful sculptures of Shiva which is located. And that is the beauty of this particular temple. Around the second tala is very simple with a yalivari going around on all the 4 sides. The griva or the next portion of the shikara has 4 important sculptures located on the 4 directions, 4 cardinal directions. The shikara is finished with stucco, and you find the stucco images of 2 men holding it. And all these were later additions, must have happened during the 17th century, renovations done under the Vijayanagar kings. The plastering of it with the lime mortar and introducing the sculptures and all these elements, what you see here must have been the later addition during the 17th century, renovation done during the Vijayanagar kings. Apart from that, you have the beautiful Rishabhas, the bulls of Shiva, placed on the 4 cardinal directions. Very realistic and very beautiful bulls are placed on the 4 cardinal directions of this tala, that is the second tala. In all, this temple has got only 22 sculptures on the Vimana. And there are 5 sculptures in a particular tala on a particular side. So now what we are seeing is and on the east side, you have only 3. So 15 plus 3, 18, and 4 sculptures on the second tala. So this constitutes about 22 sculptures in all in this particular temple, which are of great artistic value. All these sculptures that you see is about 2 to 2.5 feet in height. And all these sculptures are very unique and are most wonderful creations that you can see only in this particular temple. Most of the sculptures are not seen elsewhere, though some of the sculptures which you find commonly used in all the other temples are also there. Many of the sculptures are very unique only to this temple, and it's not been repeated in any of the temples elsewhere also. This is the uniqueness of this particular temple of Thiruvalesswaram. And that makes this temple as an architectural wonder. Now coming to the south, side. First thing, you have a separate koshna which has been introduced later, and you have the image of Dakshinamurti here. And this is inside an extended mandapam, which was a later introduction. Above the Dakshinamurti, in the first tala, you see Nataraja. And again, above this Nataraja, you see another image of Dakshinamurti seated. This is a very, very unique representation that you can see only in this particular temple. Now, Dakshinamurti is a silent image where Shiva takes the role of a guru, seated under the banyan tree in a silent mode. He gives the Jnanopadesha to the rishis. Whereas Nataraja above Dakshinamurti is a totally dynamic force of Shiva, which is full of action. And again, on top of that, you have another Dakshinamurti, which is serene and tranquil. So what does it convey to us? You see that the Nataraja is contrast to Dakshinamurti. The image of Nataraja is contrast to Dakshinamurti. Normally, in all the temples that you go and see around, you will have the Dakshinamurti in the seated place in the lowest level. And above that, you will find the Dakshinamurti playing the veena, either seated or standing. And again, on the next level also, you will have the same Veenadhara Dakshinamurti or the normal Dakshinamurti repeated. And all the three images in line will be only Dakshinamurti. But here they've introduced this Nataraja. That is the uniqueness of this. This is a great philosophical concept and a very rare representation found only in few temples. I've seen like this in few of the temples, like one in Salem, one in Tirumbayur, and few places only. Very rare to see this sort of a representation. What does it mean? It means a very great philosophy of the static energy and the dynamic energy are in line, or it indicates the staticness energy ends up to be a dynamic energy, and that dynamic energy again ends up into a static energy. What a beautiful concept. They have just spread it across by placing these wonderful sculptures in line. This is a very, very unique concept, which so far I have found only in 3 temples to the best of my knowledge. Then you have the Ganga Visarjana Murti. What a beautiful representation of this Ganga Visarjana Murti. Shiva releasing or accepting the Ganga in one of his matted locks. That meant when Shiva accepts this Ganga in his matted locks, Parvati is very upset because Shiva is giving a place to another lady in his head. So Parvati is very upset, and Shiva is consoling Parvati in a very, very beautiful manner. Look at the close-up of this. The Ganga has just landed in Shiva's matted locks here. Parvati has turned her face, and Shiva is consoling her and saying that, okay, I released her. And he releases the Ganga, which is there in his matted locks. And that is a beautiful representation of the Ganga Visarjana Murti. Look at the beauty of that. Look at the face of Shiva and look at the face of Parvati. It's so expressive. The Parvati's face is so expressive. She has turned her face with anger. When Shiva touches her, she pacifies. And there is a shyness that comes into her face, which is very beautifully depicted in this. And look at the posture in which this wonderful Parvati is standing and the majestic pose of Shiva in which he is handling her, a very critical situation, very beautifully depicted in this wonderful sculpture of Ganga Visarjana Murti. The next is, we come across is the Rishabhantaka. Shiva and Parvati reclining onto the bull Rishabha on a very, very joyful mood. Look at that. Shiva is very happy, smiling, and he is just reclining to the bull along with Parvati. Again, Parvati's face is so serene and full of expression. You can see the shyness in Parvati's face, and look at the way she is just wriggling when Shiva puts her arm around her waist. The way in which a lady immediately wriggles, that particular action is very beautifully captured in this wonderful sculpture, the Tribhanga in which Shiva is standing, and the Tribhanga that forms out of Parvati's posture is something phenomenal. And this is the only place we could see such a wonderful representation of Rishabhataka. You have Rishabhataka representations, many of the temple, but this particular representation is very unique. When you compare it with many of the other sculptures of Rishabhataka, you see elsewhere. The next one is Nataraja. Nataraja in his Ananda Tandava pose is very beautifully depicted in the middle of the sala. Look at that Nataraja. What a beautiful representation of sculptural force of a sculpture done in granite, which is as good as that of a bronze image. Look at the way, the three-dimensional effect that has been given to that. Unfortunately, one of the arms is broken, but in spite of that, you can make out the beautiful three-dimensional effect of the Nataraja that has been made there. Look at that Nataraja, how beautifully he dances, showing his Panchakrityas. Look at the matted locks of Nataraja. Normally, in many of the temples and the images of Nataraja, you would see either the matted locks are flowing all over, Viritta Shanchade, you call it, or Panitta Shade, or flowing down on the shoulders. Here, this matted locks of Nataraja is beautifully curled and beautifully made as a headdress. This sort of a headdress, the first time we see in one of the sculptures in South India, the same headdress is what we saw it in the Elephanta caves, where they had depicted Shiva as Nateshwara. The same headdress, which is seen in Elephanta, is represented here. I do not know how or what was the reason or what is the connection between that, but this is a very unique representation of Nataraja that you could see in this wonderful temple of Thiruvalesswaram. Look at that, the next image. This image is a very rare and very unusual image that you see here. You see Shiva is standing here, the Nandi is here, Parvati is here, and one Bhutagana is holding the horns of Nandi. Now, what does this mean? Shiva is standing with the Suchi Mudra. He is pointing out his fingers to Nandi. Probably, is he giving an advice to Nandi, and the Bhutaganas are playing in a happy mood by holding the horns of Nandi, or Shiva comes to punish Nandi here, where the Bhutagana has brought this Nandi in front of Shiva and Parvati is looking on. We do not know what is the mythological story behind it. I've also been trying to get it, but unfortunately, I'm not able to get this particular story on what it is based. But it's a wonderful sculpture where this is very unique and not represented in any of the temples in this country. This is a wonderful sculpture that you see here. The Bhutaganas are holding that, whether they are holding in a playful mood or whether they have brought this Nandi in front of Shiva after he had committed some mistake, it's not known. Why is Shiva showing the Suchi Mudra to him? That's also not very clear. So this must have got a story behind it. Unfortunately, we do not know the story. I tried to get this thing, but nobody was clear about it. And look at this. This is again a wonderful sculpture of Ardhanarishwara, as seen in many of the temples. The beautiful Ardhanarishwara, very, very beautifully depicted here. Look at that Ardhanarishwara. The Parvati side normally holds a Nilotphala flower. Here, she's holding a mirror. Again, holding a mirror, Parvati holding a mirror and looking at her face is again what we saw it in the Elephanta caves of the Rashtrakutas. So was there any connection between the Rashtrakuta image and this image also? The same Ardhanarishwara there in the Elephanta caves was also holding this mirror in the hand. So it's very unusual to see Parvati holding a mirror here. And this is a beautiful representation of the Ardhanarishwara form of Shiva here. Now on the west side, you have the sculptures. This is again the very beautiful representation of Tripurantaka form of Shiva. Normally, the people mistake this to be Subramanya, holding Villendum Vela when they call it, but actually this is a beautiful representation of Tripurantaka form of Shiva. Look at that. He's holding the bow and the arrow. The Shiva with 4 arms is standing there as Tripura Samhara Murthy or Tripurantaka or Tripurari, whatever you call it. Now here, there's another sculpture on the west side which denotes the Kalasamhara Murthy. Kalasamhara Murthy is normally seen in many of the temples. But what is unique with this particular Kalasamhara Murthy? This Kalasamhara Murthy is shown with multiple arms, 8 arms. Look at the way in which he is kicking Yama in a very striking dancing pose. Down below, you have the Markandeya also being represented. Look at that. Markandeya is hugging to Shivalinga, and here you find a Yama who's being kicked by the Kalasamhara Murthy, Shiva. What a beautiful representation. Again, see that. The Rudra, the Raudram in the faces of Shiva. The matted locks of Shiva are shown very clearly, the Trishula in which he holds, and he kicks. Very elegantly done and very elegantly executed sculpture. One of the best representations of Kalasamhara Murthy that you could see in this temple. The next is the Lingodbhava on the west side. The central figure is Lingodbhava. Lingodbhava is as usual in any other temples you see here. But normally, when you see in other temples, the Lingodbhava takes the prominence. Brahma and Vishnu shown on the either side will be smaller images. But here, you find all the 3 Trimurtis, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, all represented in the same height, probably to denote that they are all equal and there is hardly any difference between them. This is what is seen here. Very beautiful representation of Lingodbhava here. You see the Lingodbhava flanked with Brahma on this side and Vishnu on the other side, almost of the same height. And what is so important in this is that the representation of Varaha form of Shiva, Vishnu, who goes down to see the foot of Shiva. Here the Varaha is seen normally in most of the sculptures, you see Varaha represented just as a boar. But here the Varaha is represented with a boar face and the human body with a crown on his head. Again, this is a very, very unique and rare representation of Varaha Swami with a crown and the human body here, as if he's going down below to see the foot of Shiva. A very rare, unusual representation of Varaha in this sculpture. This is Dakshinamurti. Again, you see on one, and a lot of people say it is Dakshinamurti. It is okay, it is Dakshinamurti form of Shiva, but this denotes the Kamadahana aspect of Shiva. Kama throws the arrow on Shiva and Shiva burns it down. So that Kamadahana Murti is what is represented here. You see the Manmada and Rati here on this wonderful sculpture. Manmada is When Shiva opens up his third eye in a very, very angry mood, Manmada is burnt to ashes. You can see that Manmada trembling. And here on his side, you have Rati pleading to give life back to Manmada. And this is again one of the beautiful representation of Gangala Murthy. The Gangala Murthy representations are seen in many of the temples. Shiva who goes down the world, beating the drum, announcing the end of this Pralaya Kala. So when the Pralaya Kala comes, he goes around announcing it. So that is the Gangala Murthy. Here, he goes out, and when he goes out beating the drum, the Bodhagana carries the Bhikshapatra, and the Parvati is also seen here along with this Gangala Murthy. Normally in a Bhikshadana Murthy and Gangala Murthy, the difference is that the Parvati is also seen there, and in Bhikshadana Murthy, it's always the Rishi Patnis. Here you can see the Shiva beating the drum and going around with holding a big stick on his shoulder. And also he's feeding the deer, which is following him along with him as he goes out. And Parvati is seen by the side. This is again a very, very beautiful representation of Gangala form of Shiva. And this is a very, very unique sculpture. A very rare sculpture seen only in this particular temple. What a unique sculpture it is. Normally at the first sight, you cannot make out what is this. A lady standing in one leg, and what is all that representations that you see here? When you closely look at it, it is the image of Parvati who did the Panchagni tapas. You see the close-up of this image. Parvati stood on her toe with 5 Agnis all around there. And she started praying to Shiva to marry him. That is the Kamakshi Devi. Shiva marries her later. And Kamakshi did this Panchagni tapas. She did it in the temple of Mangari, where she stood on top of the fire with one leg or one toe. She balanced herself and she was praying to Shiva. This Kamakshi's tapas is a very rare representation that is not seen in many of the temples, or rather any of the temples, finds a place in Thiruvalesswaram. Again, a very rare and beautiful sculpture. Look at the face of Devi Parvati or Kamakshi. Her eyes are closed, her hair is open, hands are folded. She is totally devoted, standing among the 5 Agnis, Agnikundas. I mean, in spite of the heat that is generated, her concentration is totally devoted to Shiva and she's praying to Shiva. This is a beautiful representation of Kamakshi Devi in this particular temple. Again, the next one is again a very unique and rare sculpture that you see here. What does that? Shiva is seated there, and there is some other 2 other figures there in the side. Normally, when you see this sculpture, you will not understand what it is, but unless you know a little basis of the Puranas to understand this particular event of that. Look at that sculpture. Shiva is seated there, and down below is the Apaspara Purusha. Here is one man and another girl there. Now, what does it denote? When Shiva was praying in Himalayas, after the Kamadahana happened for the sake of Kumara Sambhava, Parvati was doing all the offerings for Shiva for his continuance of the meditation in Himalayas. She was born there as the Putri or the daughter of Himavan. So once the Kamadahana happens and Parvati and Shiva looks at Parvati and the love comes there, Himavan comes and offers Parvati, a small, young, beautiful girl, to Shiva and says that you can take her in marriage. What a beautiful representation of this wonderful scene that's seen here. Himavan offering Parvati in marriage to Shiva. And Shiva is seated in Kailash. What a beautiful representation. Again, a very, very unique and rare representation that is seen only in this temple of Thiruvalesswaram. Look at that. Shiva is seated with his one leg on top of the Apasmara Purusha, or you can take it as a Bodhagana or whatsoever. Look at that, Himavan and Parvati. Himavan is the king, Parvati is daughter. How beautifully they are represented. Look at the shyness in the face of Parvati, such a small, timid girl. She is brought in front of Shiva and offered. The father offers in marriage to Shiva. The next one is the Gajasambhara Murthy. The very normally you see all the Gajasambhara Murthis in many of the temples. This is a very unique Gajasambhara Murthy in a small way. Every sculpture has got something different in this particular temple. It is totally different from the normal method of depicting them. Here, Gajasambhara, normally the Gaja is seen down below the leg of Shiva. The head of the Gaja is normally seen down below the head, leg of Shiva. Here, his left leg is placed on the elephant's head and the skin is torn up. So again, this is a slightly different variation of the Gajasambhara Murthy that you see here in this wonderful temple of Thiruvalesswaram. The next is, again, a very interesting sculpture. This is the Chandesha Anugraha Murthy. See that in close. We saw about the beauty of the Chandesha Anugraha Murthy at Ganga Visarjana. This is much earlier than the representation that we saw in Ganga Visarjana. Probably the inspiration was derived from here, and that Chandesha Anugraha Murthy was delivered there in Ganga Visarjana. Look at the beautiful way Shiva is seated and tying the hara around the Chandesha's head. And Parvati is seated along with Shiva when Shiva is giving the Chandesha Padavi, or the post of Chandesha, to this devotee. One interesting inclusion is this Rishabha. Rishabha Vahana of Shiva is also seen along with this in this beautiful composition of the sculpture. The composition of the sculpture is something unique and very beautiful. Amazing Chandesha Anugraha Murthy. Next one is again a very interesting sculpture, and I had to literally go around places to find out what really it represents. And finally, I come to a conclusion which, after talking to so many people, thus this should be the story of the Pugal Tunai Nayanar. Pugal Tunai Nayanar was from the temple of very close to Kumbakonam. I forget the name of the temple. And he was, he was from the Shaiva Marabu of the Sivacharya of the temple, who was doing regular abhishekams on a regular basis to Shiva. Shiva is an abhisheka priya. Every day he used to offer a lot of water and do the abhishekam for Shiva. There was a drought in that place and he could hardly get any water, and the water was not even available for drinking. Even then, this Nayanar managed to get so much of water to do this regular abhishekam, and Shiva was pleased him, and he was given the post of a Nayanar, and he was blessed by Shiva. So that is the story of Pugattunai Nayanar, and this could be the sculpture of the Pugattunai Nayanar. I think so, because here normally the Nayanar did the abhishekam only for the linga, but here instead of the linga, Shiva's image is being given, and you can see that Nayanar holding a pot of water trying to do the offering, the Abhisheka to Shiva. So this should be Pugaltunai Nayanar is what I conclude. I'm not sure about this exactly because Periya Puranam came out much later than the period of Rajaraja. Periya Puranam was known to this world only through Shekhilar, which is 200 years later of Rajaraja's time. But how could an incident that happened in Periya Puranam be depicted during the time of Rajaraja is a big question. Or were everybody aware of this? Because Sundaramurti Nayanar is in Tirutondar Tohai also talks about this. Was his popularity of the Sundaramurti Nayanar's Tirutondar Tohai made the sculptor to do this is also a question there. So let us conclude. This is again a wonderful sculpture, a very rare sculpture, only found in this particular temple of Thiruvalesswaram. You see here, on the east face, you have a beautiful image of Shiva with a bow and arrow, with his one leg on top of Rishabha. What is this? Shiva standing on Rishabha and shooting an arrow. This is the representation of Tripurantaka. When Shiva went for the Tripura Samhara, what happened? All the devas also joined with him, and everybody were thinking Shiva is going to destroy these demons only because of their strength. So immediately, what happened? The chariot wheel axle broke, and the chariot started trembling. Immediately, Mahavishnu took the form of a bull and came in support of the axle. So when Shiva was ready to shoot the arrow at the Tripurasuras, he just saw them smile and all the Tripurasuras vanished. So this bull represents the Mahavishnu, and Shiva's one leg is kept on that, and his action is shown as if is focusing on the Tripurasuras, but the smile on the face very clearly denotes that he vanquished the three asuras by just a simple smile. This is a very, very unique and a beautiful representation of Tripura Samhara Murti. Again, you have another wonderful sculpture here. A closer look of this sculpture will reveal that is again another form of representation of the Kala Samhara Murti. You find a Yama down below, Shiva kicking him with his left leg and with the multiple arms. And he's also warning Yama with his one hand. He says, you did the mistake, so I'm kicking you. And he kicks the Yama. This is the Kala Samhara Murti, a very beautiful and a unique way of representation of the Kala Samhara Murti. Look at the posture, the torso of the body of Shiva, how he is just emerging out of the linga in a force and kicking this Yama. Very beautifully depicted with multiple arms, or 8 arms, you say. And look at that beautiful representation of the Kala Samhara Murti in this particular temple. This is again a very interesting sculpture of Kannappa Nayanar. We all know the story of Kannappa Nayanar. And this Kannappa Nayanar gave his eye for Shiva. This is a story very well known. And this is a depiction of Kannappa Nayanar taking it out, plucking out his eye and offering it to Shiva at Kalahasti. Now, how do we say it is Kalahasti? Look at the rings on the top of the linga. Even today in Kalahasti, they keep a kavacha, which is something like this rings on there. You can see the steps. They denote the Navagrahas there, and that's what is seen here. This is Kannappa Nayanar, and when Kannappa Nayanar is offering his eyes, the Shivacharya is watching it from behind. He is also shown there, and Kannappa Nayanar has bought a dead meat here, probably a boar or something, and left behind here, offered as a Nivedyam to Shiva. That is also seen here. A very unique and beautiful representation of Kannappa Nayanar is seen here. The next, look at that. You can see the boar or anything antelope here, a piece of meat there, and the Shivacharya and the Shiva, Kannappa Nayanar taking out his eyes and offering it to Shiva. Again, on the top, the second level, you have the Dakshinamurti, which we saw here, a very beautiful, very wonderful sculpture of Dakshinamurti. Look at that, a serene way in which Dakshinamurti is seated. And look at this hairstyle. It's quite unique and different. The next side, you have this Brahma. Brahma with his four faces, seated in Yoga Mudra, seated in yogic pose. And that's a very unique Brahma here, which is normally you find Brahma in standing pose in the koshtas of many temples. Here, Brahma is seen as a seated pose on top of a lotus flower, holding his Kamandala and Akshamala, and seated in a very clear yogic posture. Look at that. You can see the Akshamala, Kamandala, and seated in a yogic posture in Padmasana on top of a lotus flower. This is a very interesting sculpture. A lot of people mistake it to be Indra, but this is the sculpture or the image of Subramanya, the Skanda, the son of Shiva. You can see that he's holding. Hello, I would like you to mute. I don't want you to talk there. I don't know who is it. Kindly mute it. Here, Subramanya is shown holding his Shakti and Vajrahasta, and he's seated on top of an elephant. Elephant is the Vahana of Subramanya before the Sura Samhara. So in a lot of temples, you find the elephant Vahana of Subramanya, especially in many of the temples, you can see that. So this is Subramanya seated on top of the elephant. This is again a very beautiful representation that you see in this wonderful temple of Thiruvalesswaram. Look at the way he's seated majestically on top of the elephant. A great short temple of mesmerizing beauty situated outside the Chola's mainland. A very simple temple where the Vimana is studded with the most beautiful and exquisite sculptures, or rather rare sculptures, not seen elsewhere. It is unfortunate that this great temple is located in a godforsaken village and hardly attracts any visitors. It is my wish that this great temple should be made known to this world and public, and should have art lovers and visitors coming there regularly to enjoy the sculptural beauty of this temple. My pranams to the great builder and the unknown craftsmen and sthapatis who created this great, beautiful temple of Thiruvalesswaram. Thank you. Any questions? I'm prepared to take it. This is a very short, small lecture. You can unmute yourself and talk. If you have any questions,